This is CBC Here and Now.
I cannot access my record at all at the moment simply because I don't have an MCP number. It's just yet another thing that makes you kind of feel unwelcomed here.
Caught in a loophole.
Why people who don't have MCP cards are struggling to get the vaccine passport.
Well, another rainy day today, but some of us will see the sun tomorrow.
The College of the North Atlantic has received funding to create a new program that specializes in servicing electric vehicles.
Electric vehicles are the way of the future. I mean, like it or lump it.
I'm Jeremy, and I'll have that story coming up on Here and Now.
Welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes.
And I'm Peter Cowan.
Well, being able to show proof of vaccination becomes much more important on Friday. That's when the province's vaccine passport becomes mandatory for most non-essential activities like going to a bar or restaurant. But for people without an MCP card, that's a problem. They can't access their vaccination records online. The new system requires an MCP number. The province says it is working to figure out just how many people are in that situation, but new Canadians and recent arrivals top the list.
My name is Fishery. I've been a resident of Newfoundland for the past 8 years, and unfortunately, although I do qualify for MCP at the moment, I am caught up in, well, logistics, I guess. I'm waiting for renewal of paperwork. As such, I currently cannot get the vaccine passport either. Of course, it's very frustrating to have to deal with this kind of situation because, I mean, a person with my kind of work, I need access to different kinds of places. I'm a person who works in different locations pretty often, and as such, that limits my access heavily, obviously.
Hi, my name is Maria Dusan, and I am the chair for Healthcare for All. It is hugely problematic and scary for people because what we are seeing is that there is a huge gap in information. There is a huge gap in information from the government websites where people are trying to find what is the alternative when they are vaccinated, but they do not have access to the vaccine passport because they do not have access to MCP, to a valid MCP number. This situation can be dangerous for people, especially people who are migrants, who do not have access to healthcare, so do not have MCP, and who are on top of that racialized. And what we see is like people who are racialized experience racism day in, day out, just as it is. Not having access to the vaccine passport is just basically exacerbating and creating the conditions for people to experience racism or for people to be ostracized and potentially face danger.
I've lived here for the past 8 years, and I've generally come to love the island. I've come to love the people here. It's basically become my home. It's the longest place I've ever lived in. However, it's just yet another thing that makes you kind of feel unwelcomed here, and it's sad because you love it, but you love the island, you love Newfoundland, but it can't help it. It just feels like it doesn't love you back, and it's a frustrating reality. Every time you hit this wall, it's a constant reminder of that you're not from here.
So people without an MCP number, well, they can't get the vaccine passport or download and print their proof of vaccination online, but they can use the paper vaccination records that they were given when they were given their shot. Now, not everyone has kept those. Matar says the nurse told him not to worry about his paper copy because the record would be available online. The province says anyone in that situation should contact their vaccine provider to get another slip. Now, some provinces have given people without a health card a unique number so they can still use that vaccine passport system. But the health minister said today they didn't want to go that route.
Made a decision to use the paper record as a fallback because it covered off several eventualities, not just related to the lack of an MCP card. I think in many respects it was to help alleviate some of the workload on our IT sector, who have really been working very hard on things like the vaccine passport, on the booking system for COVID vaccine.
Because you need an MCP card in order to get the COVID vaccine certificate, there have been a lot of people applying to get one. The health minister said they've added extra staff in order to process the people who maybe had their card expire and they're now trying to renew it, or may just have never bothered to apply for one in the first place.
I think a lot of people who don't have need for regular medical care have kind of got a little bit complacent about that. That aside, we do know that there are people who have long expired MCP cards, and so we've placed extra staff in MCP offices to help process the increase in volume. If your expiry is within 3 months, you can renew it online yourself.
Now, the health minister has given a hard no to the opposition's request today to move the implementation date for the vaccine passport to mid-December. The NL Vax Pass is scheduled to go live in 2 days on October 22nd. The Progressive Conservatives say many residents need more time. Here now's Mark Quinn explains.
In the House of Assembly, the Progressive Conservative leader made this request, saying his party has heard from many people who haven't been able to get their second shot yet.
I asked the Premier, will he consider postponing the requirement of presenting the vaccine passport until December 17th, the same deadline which public servants are required to be vaccinated?
The health minister responded and stood by the current plan to begin requesting vaccination passports on Friday.
This is sound public health, and we may well be amongst the middle of the pack. We're not the first to do this, we're not the last to do this, but we have given ample warning and ample time, and there are vacant appointments at vaccination clinics across the province. There's no excuse.
Outside the House, the debate continued, with the PC leader arguing people like his constituents on Bell Island, who only recently got their first shots, will be unfairly excluded from many places in the province once the NL Vax Pass is required.
Civil servants got till December 17th, so we're saying that's fine, and we understand the rationale for that. Why could it not be for everybody, nudging those now who have to get their first vaccine or have gotten it in the last 2 or 3 weeks when it was announced, to give them time to get their second one?
Haggie was firm. He said the government won't budge.
We are not intending to move the deadline.
Haggie said people having technical issues with the app can use the paper record they were given when they were vaccinated. And he said others who waited too long to get vaccinated must take responsibility for their own decisions. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, today we also got the latest COVID numbers. In the last 2 days, there have been 9 new cases, almost all of them existing contacts of known cases. Now, 7 of those are in the eastern region, and all but 1 are a contact of a previous case. There is 1 case in central and 1 case in western, also both contacts. With 10 recoveries, there are now 46 active cases. Well, in some other news, there's some flooding in central Labrador tonight. This is the road between Northwest River and Happy Valley Goose Bay. You can see the water flowing right over it. Road crews at the scene tell CBC News that the flooding is likely caused by a beaver dam. Workers remain on the road and they're surveying the damage.
Well, Nain broke a record overnight last night in not the normal type of records that we normally see. It's actually the warmest low that Nain has seen in a while. In fact, since 2005, the old record was 3.3 degrees for the overnight low, and last night only went down to 3.6 degrees. So that is pretty significant considering the normal low around this time of year is about -3, and really doesn't look like there's any temperatures even close to that as we head through the next week or so. So certainly going to see some warm weather. Temperatures didn't really move too much today. 5 degrees in Nain this afternoon. Temperatures across the island mainly sitting in the single digits along the northeast like we've been seeing, and then the southwest still looking at those lovely temperatures, 12 to 14 degrees for you, and then through central anywhere from 8 to 11 as the daytime highs today. Now what we have on the go is an area of low pressure that is heading north right now, and then another one to the south. That's going to move out as we head through the evening hours tonight. But the rain is generally going to continue, and it's going to continue to spread further north as well. The other thing we'll see is those winds. So we're going to see the winds pick up tonight, certainly for eastern areas of the island, picking up around 40 kilometers per hour as we get into the afternoon tomorrow, and then stay there through the day. I'll get into those details when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, the man who killed a St. John's woman in 2017 asked for her family's forgiveness yesterday as lawyers debated his upcoming prison sentence. Steve Bragg told the province's Supreme Court that he's sorry for leaving Victoria Head's family without their daughter, mother, and sister. Bragg pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in May, avoiding what would have been a 6-week-long jury trial. His guilty plea will likely count towards his sentencing as a mitigating factor, but Crown Attorney Lisa Stead pointed out that although he accepted responsibility for the murder, his admission of guilt came late, 2.5 years after Head's death. He also fled the province to evade police. A decision is expected November 4th. Well, earlier today, the opposition asked for details of the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary's review to be made public. This after the Justice Department announced yesterday it's bringing in a lawyer to examine workplace culture and governance within the RNC. Government has granted that request. Still, the Progressive Conservatives are pushing to launch that review as quickly as possible.
It's been months since, these issues with respect to the sexual assault allegations arose. And, leaving that out there, this delay certainly does not do anything to restore public confidence in our police force. So that needs to be done, this review. And I understand it's going to take 6 months to complete. No, we need to have this done immediately.
Well, the RNC is weighing in today, saying it welcomes a workplace review of its organization. In a statement, the RNC says it is focused on the safety and well-being of the organization and the communities it serves. The constabulary also says that a workplace review will provide information which will strengthen the future of the RNC, as well as support the officers and civilians who work there. Well, in other news, a push towards electric vehicles means ramping up education for more than just drivers and mechanics. The College of the North Atlantic will be getting nearly $1 million to provide training for some additional fields, including electricians and first responders. Here Now's Jeremy Eaton has that story.
You have no idea how much fun we just had.
There's no denying that rides in vehicles, like this one owned by the province, is the way forward.
Electric vehicles are the way of the future. Like it or lump it.
It's really the lack of things that we're looking at.
In the automotive shop at the College of the North Atlantic, the province announced it would be giving the school close to $1 million to offer training on electric vehicles.
We're spending it on developing a number of new courses aimed at upskilling professionals who are already working in their industries so that they can respond to electric vehicle situations or electric vehicle issues that any-day users or owners are going to experience.
This battery weighs approximately 1,000 pounds.
The three main groups are mechanics, first responders, and electricians, a mix of online and in-class training.
We will see a huge surge in the number of electric vehicles across the province in the coming years, and we will be there to ensure that we have people who are informed about what they do. We have service technicians who can fix them. We'll have first responders who can respond to any incidents that may be involved in.
2 years ago, there were 113 registered electric vehicles in Newfoundland and Labrador. At the end of last year, that number had jumped to 195.
The manufacturers and the dealers are doing specific training. So a Chevy Bolt, you need to be trained on a Chevy Bolt. The Hyundai, you need to be trained on the Hyundai. They're not exactly the same. So it is very important to have a base level understanding of how electric vehicles operate and work. Then they would need specialized training.
Cox is also a volunteer firefighter in Clarenville. With so few electric vehicles on our roads, there are a lot of misconceptions about what happens if you crash.
The high voltage system is isolated from the vehicle, isolated from the chassis, the body components, everything like that. So you're in no danger of touching the vehicle or extricating someone or removing someone while it's in water.
And our second fuel reservoir.
But along with money to provide training for those dealing with what's under the hood, the province promised to add to the 14 charging stations already along the TCH and the one in Gross Mourne. The PUB gave approval for 19 more, something Minister Davis says should be in place by the summer.
We're doing this for them. It's not for me, it's not for Minister Byrne or Minister Davis. It's really for the next generation and the generations to come.
Work is underway to develop the programs, which should be up and running in September. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, now to some sports news. And Peter, what a week for Dawson Mercer of Bay Roberts. On Friday, he had that impressive assist against the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah, but last night, Mercer scored his first ever NHL goal. Let's have a look.
Taking here, Tatar walking in, plays it across, they score! Dawson Mercer, his first National Hockey League goal, and it's a beauty. The Devils have the lead.
Look at that smile. The New Jersey Devils came out on top with a 4-2 win over the Seattle Kraken. It's the Devils' second straight win of the season.
Yes, a big congrats to Dawson Mercer. Wonderful that his parents were there to see it all in person. Such a great pass, and what a shot. Mercer spoke with reporters about last night's game and scoring his very first NHL goal.
It was great. Obviously, Gravesy made a nice quick up over there, the tuna, and then obviously when the D went down and I seen the saucer pass coming, I just tried to get it off as quick as possible, and it worked out in the end, and I'm pretty happy I got that one out of the way.
Do you black out, like, once it happens, like, just in terms of taking in that moment?
No, I took it all in. I know the guys were really happy, and I was just, celebrating there in the corner also, and then, the fans got up, the building erupted, and it was a great feeling for me.
Well, another rainy evening out there. Don't worry, the sun looks like it'll come out tomorrow. However, things will get a little windy. We'll get into those details when we come back.
Well, time for a look at the weather forecast. Nasty old day in St. John's, but you had a bit of, I guess, sunshine this morning.
I did.
When you got to have a lovely experience with a classroom.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of the job is to be able to talk to kids, especially in grade 5, because that's the weather unit, and that is where, well, pretty much when I solidified my love of the weather, for sure. Let's take a look at the picture that we had today. It's obviously a virtual visit. Admirals Academy had me there today virtually. This is Miss Ellsworth, Miss Strickland, and Mr. Warren's classes, and they had some pretty great questions this afternoon. So thank you very much for having me. It was a lovely day to sit in and talk about the weather, because it wasn't all that nice outside. Temperatures were, only in the single digits for parts of the northeast coast. And we're still sitting there right now, 9 degrees in St. John's, 8 in Badger. Those temperatures along the southwest still looking into the double digits anyway, 10 to 12 degrees, and then single digit temperatures. The story up across Labrador right now, currently 5 in Makovic. So if we're taking a look at the current satellite radar, losing that satellite because of the daylight, but lots of rain, and it's lifting north at this point as the area of low pressure heads a little bit further north. And that will generally be the story as we head through the evening hours tonight, and the models are actually picking up that very well. So we'll see the generally the line of showers that are working their way across the eastern areas of the island head further north, but then they'll redevelop in behind that, really all along the northeast coast tonight. Chance of some showers along the west coast in that onshore flow as well, and then generally unsettled up across Labrador as well. However, in Lab West, that risk of some flurries will be tonight as your temperatures drop through the overnight hours, below 0, in fact, tonight. So all the showers will change over to that risk of some flurries. Winds, not a whole lot to speak of, certainly towards the western portions of the province, but the further east you go, closer to that area of low pressure, those winds are a little bit stronger. So they'll be out of the north for the northern sections, 40 to 60 kilometers per hour tonight. Same thing. Further towards the morning hours, though, for eastern areas. So westerlies for the most part tonight, about 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Temperatures tonight not moving too much, anywhere from 4 to 9 degrees for the island, and then 3 to 4 degrees other than in the west for Labrador tonight, again with that chance of showers. So that area of low pressure will still be in place tomorrow. It's going to move further away, though. So the rain will eventually taper to showers or drizzle, and potentially even some sunshine in the afternoon. Best chance of seeing that, though, will be for the Avalon along the south coast, generally, because that's the furthest away from the area of low pressure. Through central, the northern portions of the northern peninsula, rather, and southeastern Labrador, you're still going to see likely some cloudy skies through the day, and then the chance of some showers as well. But then the skies should clear as we get into the evening hours, as a ridge of high pressure starts to move in, and it's going to set the stage for actually a pretty nice start to Friday as well through the afternoon. So temperatures tomorrow, not too bad. Should reach the double digits in St. John's, about 10 degrees. Those winds again, though, going to ramp up about 40 to 60 kilometers per hour. They'll be out of the west, and then I'm going to keep that sun icon in for most of the Avalon, as well as along the southern Newfoundland as well. 11 degrees in Marystown. However, staying a little bit cooler and more cloudy towards Clarenville, Bonavista area. Same thing through central, maybe a few peaks of sun, but overall generally a gray day with those single-digit temperatures, 7 to 9 degrees. And then again, the southern areas of the island, 11 degrees in Harbour Breton tomorrow, along with some sunny breaks. Same thing as you head towards Burgeo, Port aux Basques. The winds generally out of the northwest for the west coast, about 20 to 40 kilometers per hour, but those skies will stay gray, and that chance of showers will stick around with those single-digit temperatures. Pretty similar forecast for the northern peninsula. Have that sun icon in there for Lanzaloo. You may see a few peaks of sun, but the winds are going to be breezy. Those northwesterlies will be gusting anywhere from 50 to 70 kilometers per hour. As far as Lab West goes, again tomorrow morning, you may see a few flurries to start, but then as the temperatures climb up, you're going to see those temperatures in and around 5 degrees, and then some sunshine for Nain, similar temperature there. And other than that, it looks like a gray day. So that's a look at tomorrow's forecast. We'll look at the weekend when I come back.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Something remarkable is happening in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. A fish species in decline for decades has made a huge comeback. The population explosion of redfish has touched off a fight over who should catch it when the fishery resumes. As Paul Withers reports, the dispute has broken out into the open.
With the population now estimated at over 4 million tons, the federal government is asking for feedback on divvying up what is expected to be the largest redfish harvest in the world when the Gulf stock reaches commercial size in a few years.
To call on the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to immediately suspend a flawed consultation.
Last week, a union representing harvesters and plant workers in Newfoundland and Labrador demanded the lion's share of the booming redfish stock to make up for economic losses in coastal communities.
But this will only happen if inshore harvesters and Indigenous groups in our province are giving a significant majority of redfish quota when this fishery opens.
The FFAW taking dead aim at the offshore fleet, which currently holds 3/4 of the Gulf redfish quota, in place since a moratorium was imposed decades ago.
The FFAW executive has vilified the offshore fishery and lobbied to have quotas taken from offshore harvesters and allocated to the inshore.
Today, pushback from one of the redfish offshore license holders, who says the union campaign threatens to upset millions of dollars in investments to harvest redfish.
And now this quota is under attack by the union to simply be taken away. When successful, this destroys the livelihoods of offshore harvesters and plant workers, as well as those who hold positions supporting the offshore sector.
In fact, most of the Gulf offshore redfish quota is held by Nova Scotia companies like Mersey, Clearwater, and Lewisburg Seafoods. Mersey has made its own bet on redfish, recently opening this $14 million groundfish plant outside Digby. Money spent in anticipation of the redfish comeback.
And that the quotas ought to remain the same.
Today, Nova Scotia's fisheries minister weighed in.
We've had these quotas pre-1995. I see no reason to change them now. It's something that we've invested in as Nova Scotians.
Ottawa asking for feedback and getting it, a looming fishery expected to be worth tens of millions of dollars, 5 provinces with a stake in the outcome. Paul Withers, CBC News, Halifax.
So I do think there is a case for the federal government to think about redesigning transfers. I think there's a strong case for incorporating things like demographics.
Equalization is on the ballot in Alberta, but does the largely symbolic referendum out west have wider implications for this province? We'll talk transfer payments with a professor of economics at the University of Calgary coming up. Well, there are some extra questions on the ballot in the municipal elections in Alberta this week. The election includes a referendum on equalization, the program that transfers federal tax dollars to some provinces to maintain comparable levels of services across the country. Now, voters in Alberta are being asked if the equalization program should be removed from the Canadian Constitution. The results are still being tallied, but does that vote have any implications for this province? Joining me now to delve into this topic is Trevor Toome, a professor with the Department of Economics at the University of Calgary. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So what is the point of this referendum on equalization in Alberta? Is this like just a symbolic vote, or could it actually lead to change?
So I think in many ways it is a symbolic vote, and even the government and the premier himself here have been fairly clear about that equalization to some is this symbol of all sorts of other grievances that the provincial government here has with respect to some federal policy issues like pipelines, tanker rules off the West Coast, climate policy. There's a long list of issues that the current provincial government here really takes issue with the federal government. And they hope that this referendum will raise to, they say, the top of the national agenda, these concerns that Alberta has. So I don't think we should view the referendum question about equalization or Section 36(2) of the Constitution, we shouldn't take that literally.
And, you know, like in Alberta, the equalization program is a real sore spot for people here in this province. At one point, the possibility of provincial bankruptcy entered the conversation here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And even so, we're still one of the provinces excluded from the equalization transfers. Can you explain the logic of the formula?
Sure. And I think it is important to distinguish Newfoundland and Labrador or Saskatchewan from Alberta. Alberta does not receive a payment for very good reasons, and design details of the formula really don't matter for this province. And so how it works is the feds will calculate an amount of revenue that a provincial government could raise per person if its tax rates were average. So Newfoundland and Labrador doesn't receive a payment because in addition to those core revenue sources, resource revenues are also included. For example, this year, Newfoundland and Labrador receives nothing through equalization, but if resource revenues were excluded from the formula, then the province would have received $556 million. So for Newfoundland and Labrador, design details of the formula do matter for whether a payment is made or not. Whereas for a province like Alberta, the economy is just so much stronger, average incomes so much higher, employment rates so strong that no matter what the formula details are, Alberta won't qualify for a payment. And so our concerns with the formula are really not based on the actual policy itself. So I do think there is a case for the federal government to think about redesigning transfers. I think there's a strong case for incorporating things like demographics. Newfoundland and Labrador, but other Atlantic provinces as well, have particular challenges with financing healthcare because populations in those provinces are on average older than what you see in, say, Alberta or even Ontario. And so thinking about how we can redesign transfers to help provinces that have genuine needs, which is not Alberta, is, I think, something we should consider.
If Alberta does get any traction on this, do you think Newfoundland and Labrador could benefit in any way?
Well, one of these specific asks of some here in Alberta is to remove resource revenues from the equalization formula. And that's indeed a long-standing position of many in Alberta. You can trace that position back even to Ernest Manning way back in the 50s and 60s. If that were to happen, nothing would change for Alberta. But if resource revenues were excluded, Newfoundland and Labrador would benefit significantly. And the moment that that change is made, then it would look like Newfoundland and Labrador would continue to receive equalization payments that gradually rise over time. And so my own estimates suggest that if we were to remove resource revenues from the formula, then total payments to Newfoundland and Labrador would start immediately, be roughly equivalent to about 2% of Newfoundland and Labrador's economy and gradually rising to about 3%. So pretty significant levels of support would be then provided to that province rather than Alberta. And I guess in Newfoundland's case, it's a particularly interesting issue to be talking about. I think there will be a payment to Newfoundland next year, but just as a blip due to COVID and not actually something that would persist over time.
So what could change that would allow Newfoundland and Labrador to receive payments next year?
The 2020 did see a massive decline in oil prices and resource revenues, and that's going to feed into the calculation for next year for the first time. So the COVID-related disruptions are really largely what might lead equalization to be paid out to not just Newfoundland and Labrador, probably also Saskatchewan and Ontario as well. We won't know for sure until December, but that's my gut.
Oh, interesting. Trevor Toom, thank you so much for speaking with me about this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, do you have your vaccine passport ready? Starting this weekend, you're going to need it for non-essential indoor activities like eating in a restaurant or even getting your hair cut.
Yes, but it hasn't been straightforward for everyone. Peter, you've been getting a lot of questions about how this is going to work. So let's start with people experiencing problems with their vaccination record. What should fully vaccinated people do if one of their shots isn't listed?
Okay, so the main thing, Carolyn, is that you need to get in touch with whoever gave you your shot. So each of the health authorities has a phone number or email address. It's listed on the government's website, and you'll need to go in and request that they fix that online record. How long is that going to take? Well, I've heard from people who've waited more than a week and they still haven't heard back. The minister said today, anecdotally, some people in Central have had theirs fixed within 48 hours. But what should you do if Friday comes and it's still not fixed? Well, the answer is rely on paper. As long as you have that form that they gave you when you were first vaccinated, you can use that instead.
The aftercare sheet and immunisation record in this province, and this is an example from Eastern Health, is a document that shows what you had and when you had it, and is regarded by us as proof of vaccination for businesses, organisations and government bodies. People with out-of-province records will have got something similar from the jurisdiction where they received their shot. If you were vaccinated here and don't have a valid MCP, this record will do in its place.
So the the health minister there mentioned people who are out of province. You can actually go online and register to have your dose from elsewhere recognized here, so you still get that vaccine passport. But the minister said that can take at least 2 weeks. So in the meantime, you basically just need to keep using that paper form.
Okay, so it's not just your vaccination record or QR code that you'll have to show. You also have to show ID. So what are the requirements there?
Yeah, there was a little change announced to that today. So if you're 19 years or older, the preference is still to use a piece of picture ID that has your birth date on it. So a driver's license is what they're really recommending. And they'll even take it if it's expired, for example. So seniors who may not drive anymore, got an old ID, you can still use that. But they're realizing that some people are without picture ID, so they're also going to accept 2 pieces of non-photo ID, but at least one of those has to have your birth date on it. So that could be a birth certificate or your MCP card. And if you're worried about having to carry around all these papers and pieces of ID, the minister says it is okay to just have a picture of it stored on your phone, and you can show it to people that way.
Good note. Well, what about people with medical exemptions? How is that going to work?
Yeah, a couple of things are changing with that process as well. The minister initially said that there were only 2 valid reasons to get a medical exemption: if you're allergic to the ingredients in the vaccine, or if you had swelling of the heart after you got your first dose, so you couldn't get your second. So the process is you go to the doctor who fills out a form, you then submit it to the province, and you were then supposed to get a QR code, just like everyone who's fully vaccinated. It would turn green, but that's not going to happen for at least a month or so. So that means in the meantime, you'll be given a letter that says you're exempt from having to have that vaccination passport. The minister said he's heard some concerns from people dealing with severe mental health issues who can't get vaccinated. So they've now gone to the College of Physicians and Surgeons, which has been setting the criteria, and they have a question that they're hoping the college will answer.
State one way or another if and what mental health conditions might be applicable for an exemption, so that family doctors, nurse practitioners, specialists would be in a position to appropriately fill in exemption forms if asked to do so. Those discussions are at a very preliminary stage at the moment, but we will be asking for something as soon as the college can do that.
Right now, Peter, you have to be at least 12 years of age to be vaccinated, but that may change soon. So what is the province's plan for vaccinating younger people?
Yeah, Pfizer has asked Health Canada for approval to vaccinate children as young as 5. It's a slightly different formula and a lower dose, so it's going to take a bit of scrutiny before that's approved. Today, health officials in this province said they've started the planning. They're expecting that it's going to come likely sometime in the winter, but you're not going to have to worry about booking a vaccine like you did for the other age groups, because right now what they're aiming for is these are school-age children, so they're going to focus on delivering it in schools.
What we had envisaged with school-age children was a program similar to that was offered for flu shots last year, whereby vaccinations could actually be offered in schools. That's kind of like a captive audience, and it would solve the pre-registration problem. The RHAs would do it in the same way with flu. So that's certainly an operational consideration that we're actively looking at the moment, and might avoid setting up yet another online portal or pre-registration system.
Now, we did hear from the acting chief medical officer of health today that they're still in the really preliminary stages before figuring all that out, so they don't really have a timeline yet for how this is all going to work. For people who are over the age of 12, right now the latest numbers show 84% of people are now fully vaccinated in Newfoundland and Labrador. Carolyn?
Well, thanks, Peter. Well, staying with this topic, there are concerns about how easy it can be to fake a person's proof of vaccination. The CBC's Thomas Dagla has more about a recent case that highlights that very issue.
The San Jose Sharks hitting the ice in Montreal without their Canadian-born forward Evander Kane, suspended for handing in a fake COVID vaccination card.
We're all disappointed and how he handled that, and the organization's disappointed.
The high-profile incident raising questions about the prevalence of counterfeits. The Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre says between July and September, it received 18 reports relating to fake proof of vaccination, including websites selling counterfeit cards, though the centre says in reality the number is probably much higher.
To be using or accepting a piece of paper that has no QR code on it, that has no means of actual validation, and that is easy to falsify.
Ontario is rolling out its QR code proof of vaccination program, but is also holding on to its previous system.
Meaning businesses here must still accept a paper vaccine receipt without enhanced security.
We are going through that right now, but there will be a period of time where people can use both.
With that text-based system, experts say names and other data can easily be removed and changed. Forensic document examiner Shabnam Preet Kaur was able to make a real-looking fake in less than 5 minutes.
The government can add a watermark or maybe a colored background so that it becomes a little more difficult for people to manipulate it.
For Quebecers, QR codes have been the only accepted proof of vaccination for weeks. Alberta is following suit in November, but New Brunswick business owners must still accept documents including photos of immunization records. So the Sharks may not be alone. With a patchwork of vaccine passports, employers could face the prospect of proof of vaccination, maybe no proof at all. Thomas Dagla, CBC News, Toronto.
Whereas Fat Cat or the Black Sheep, very fortunate to still have this room.
There's a community in the Black Sheep.
I remember it vividly, actually, the first day I held sticks.
I want to capture the gigs, I want to capture the facial expressions.
You're creating the song that you want to hear.
That made me feel better listening to that, and maybe I could write my feelings out and see how I like that.
It's really all about the music.
Fanny is a Toronto pup with 3 legs and an incredible tail. That's T-A-L-E, not T-A-I-L. But anyway, after a difficult and painful year, she's about to be center stage.
Yes, in the 2022 Miracle in Motion calendar, which focuses on pets and animals with mobility challenges. Here's Fanny's story.
She's had a pretty rough year, as everyone has. She just had a little bit rougher than most. My name is Kristen, and this is Fanny. She is a 5-year-old wire-haired pointing Griffon. Fanny just won a place in the Walkin' Pets 2022 calendar, a calendar focused on dogs and cats and cows who need assistance with their mobility. So Fanny uses a 4-wheeled wheelchair at this point.
Okay, Fanny, here's your wheelchair.
I follow Walkin' Pets on their social media, and they posted that they were taking entries for their calendar for next year, and I thought Fanny was pretty photogenic, and she benefited so much from the wheelchair itself through her recovery from her accident that I thought it would be great to get the word out about these products as well. You know, it was a good thing for her to do. In November of last year, she was upstairs in a friend's loft. She was frightened by an Amber Alert. She only has 3 legs, but she managed to still climb up and out a window, and she fell roughly about 50 feet. She fractured her vertebrae in 5 places, and she fractured a few smaller bones in her one front leg that she still has, and she was quite critical. She was put on supportive oxygen, and she was in the ICU for a little over 3 weeks, and she managed to get out and get home just before Christmas, which was great. She was just a lot of time in recuperation with a back brace and a lot of therapy and a lot of rehab. Trying to recover a dog with a broken back is difficult. Trying to recover a dog missing a front leg with a broken back is multitudes more difficult because of the bouncing they have to do to walk. They're not very stable in the first place. So that chair was a godsend for us because it kept her stable, it kept her steady, and it gave her that support she needed to recover.
Oh. My heart can't take that one. That just gave me all the feels. A 3-legged dog with a broken back. Oh my goodness.
Definitely
so
been
sweet.
through a lot. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's try to move on from that and have a look at the long-range forecast. What's in store for us?
So we're already looking ahead to the weekend, kind of, into Friday, and it's looking like a pretty nice start to Friday, with some temperatures actually climbing as well as we get through the weekend. Let's take a look at the outlook. So that area of low pressure that has been around for the last day or so is going to head further offshore, allowing a little bit of a ridge of high pressure to move in, and that looks like it should clear the skies, at least partially clear the skies through the first half of Friday. For most of the island as well as parts of Labrador. And then as we get through the afternoon hours, some cloud cover will move in, and that's ahead of our next weather maker that will move in late day Friday, certainly for Lab West and then southern areas of the island as well through the afternoon on Friday, and then that will move through as we get into Saturday morning as well. There's the area of low pressure there, and eventually through the day on Saturday those showers will continue to move in. But this is when we're going to start to see the temperatures climb up. Looks like a pretty significant bump in those temperatures thanks to southerly flow. Some areas could even reach the mid to high teens by the time we get there, but unfortunately it will come with some rain, and looks like it could be heavy at times as well. So temperatures on Friday looking pretty nice for this time of year, for about 11 to 13 degrees for most of the island. The northern peninsula a little bit cooler. However, still plenty of sunshine, at least to start. 7 and 8 degrees for you. The chance of showers and or flurries will stick around for Lab West as your temperatures only hovering around 3 degrees through the day, but a little bit warmer the further east you head. Happy Valley Goose Bay 7 degrees and Cartwright at 5, hanging on to that chance of shower. So Saturday right now, keeping the temperatures a little bit conservative at this point. They may bump up a couple of degrees, but showing about 17 degrees for Marystown on Saturday. Again, we're looking at some rain moving in. And then for the Northern Peninsula, going to keep those temperatures at this point cool into the single digits. Same thing up across Labrador, some sunshine for most. However, Lab West will continue to see those gray skies and that chance of showers as well. Temperatures for both Saturday and Sunday, I've got them up into the teens for now, with rain continuing, it looks like, through Monday, and that's when we're going to see that drop in temperatures back down to the single digits. At this point, similar forecast for central Newfoundland, 14 to 16 degrees. Monday dropping to the single digits as well, but looking at showers. Same thing for western Newfoundland, with your temperature dipping just a little bit more than that, about 7 degrees for Monday. And then for eastern Labrador, some showers on Sunday otherwise. Pretty nice start to the weekend, and then Monday looking nice as well, but overnight lows are going to start to dip again. -2 for Monday night, and then for western Labrador, you'll see some sunshine, it looks like, to start off the week, with your temperature hovering around 1. It was some evening last night, Clark's Beach. A lot of people were actually pointing out how beautiful it was. Not a whole lot of wind, and that's finally seeing a little bit of clear skies. So we saw a nice sunset. Dale Brow shared this shot with us. If you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Lovely shot.
Nice when you see the mirrored image in the water.
Oh, it's always great. Yeah. Well, Peter, as we heard earlier, you were on the briefing beat today, and a lot of people have been asking about Janice Fitzgerald. She's still not back in the briefing. So what have we heard about that?
Yeah, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald is in fact going to be back next week, we were told. Dr. Roseanne Sevier, who's been acting as the Chief Medical Officer of Health, she said today that this is probably going to be her last briefing till Dr. Fitzgerald comes back in the chair. So yeah, she was just off enjoying a nice vacation after a year and a half of some pretty stressful work. Yeah. But we'll expect to see her back next week.
Yeah, well-deserved vacation, I'm sure a lot of people would feel. Okay, well, that's it for us. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.